Welcome back for Season 3 of the Hoosier Myths and Legends podcast.
I'm Rebecca Wilhelm.
I'm Mary Quigley.
And I'm Hope Wilhelm.
Join us as we dive into the spookier side of the Hoosier state.
So what comes to your mind when you think of Indiana? Do you think of corn? Do you think of basketball? Do you think of the Indianapolis 500? Maybe you think of famous celebrities who were born in Indiana, like John Mellencamp or Michael Jackson.
But as the saying goes, there is more than corn in Indiana. 92 counties make up the Hoosier state. In this podcast, we are going to discuss some Indiana folklore from each of these counties. If you are into tall tales, ghosts, or spooky legends, then this is a podcast you are not going to want to miss.
Our story today comes from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Just off of Fall Creek Road, in the northeast part of Indianapolis, there once sat a magnificent estate. This house was well known around Indianapolis for being decorated all year long in blue Christmas lights. This was the home of Skiles Edward Test, a well-known Indianapolis businessman and millionaire. Now, while the estate was known for its beauty and its Olympic-sized swimming pool, it was mostly known for something mysterious. Supposedly, if one would be brave enough to go up to the house and take a peek in the window, they would see a woman in a glass casket draped in blue lights. For decades, that's exactly what people would do. They would come from miles around just to get a glimpse of Indiana's house of blue lights.
Our break ended up being much longer than we ever could have expected. When I did our video a while back, I never imagined we would be off the air for so long.
It's been a crazy past few months.
So our craziness started in August. And if you happen to follow my sister Mary on YouTube, then you probably know of our father's heart attack and his car accident.
This was back in August.
Dad and I caught COVID at the end of August, and we were both sick at the beginning of September, so I have battled COVID and then recently strep throat.
Yeah, and luckily my son and I, we did not catch it. And I'm not really sure how we stayed clear of it, but thankfully we did. And it's been a crazy school year for me. I was working on finishing up my requirements for my Indiana teaching license. And then I started a brand new teaching position mid-year.
Our father had to give up driving, and his heart condition is considered terminal. On top of having to take over all of his healthcare needs and make sure he gets to appointments, I started a brand new job.
So it's safe to say that it's been a whirlwind and a very stressful past few months.
Well, I keep hoping that we're off to a much better 2022.
I hope so.
I can't take any more crazy things happening.
Me either. And with all the crazy that we've been going through over the past few months, we made the decision to just scrap season 2 and go ahead and start with season 3 at this point.
So let's go ahead and dive into these legends about the House of Blue Lights. This is a story I have been interested in for a long time.
I can see why. It's fascinating, and I mean, a glass coffin with a woman in it, blue Christmas lights up all year. I can see why people would wonder about this place.
So I actually heard about this home while I was in college, and I wanted so badly to go out and see this property, but of course, the house has been gone now since the 70s.
Legend says that it was Skiles Test's wife in the coffin. She was supposedly very beautiful, and he was so in love with her that when she passed, he had her embalmed and kept like a wax figure.
I think the creepiest part of the legend is that allegedly he couldn't bear to bury her, so he kept her glass coffin so that he could still see her. I mean, come on, that's creepy.
And I agree. I think that's just going a little bit too far.
It really is.
But apparently Skiles Test was well known to be an eccentric man.
Well, one of the things that always amazes me is I love how, if it's a rich person doing weird things, then they're just called eccentric.
But if you are a poor or regular person, you are just the neighborhood weirdo.
As we get into the story, we're going to talk about some of the weird things that Mr. Test would do.
Yeah, and he was definitely known, I guess, as a weird guy. So I can see how they would think he would do something, like keeping your wife in a glass coffin.
Skiles Test got his money from his father Charles, who at the time was the president of National Motor Vehicle Company.
It seems like Skiles was a smart businessman.
Yeah, one of the stories that I found out about him, actually on the Historic Indianapolis website, was about his building his own power plant for his farm.
He didn't have just one, but 2 power plants.
So I kind of love this story. Apparently, he went head-to-head with the Indianapolis Power Company for the right to have his own power plant to supply his farm.
Yeah, he of course won. And I'm actually really impressed because apparently he was actually able to employ about 20 people at his little power plant and farm.
I mean, who does that?
You don't hear about that happening today, that's for sure.
He also apparently had his own rail system on the property. He had little trains that had National Motors in them.
He also allegedly was a hoarder and kept train cars full of mayo and ketchup and jelly and Coke.
I love it. That's the best.
Hey, I think I could get behind the hoard and the Coca-Cola.
Let's get into the legend. Skiles Test's house began to get attention, and the legend of the house started somewhere before World War II.
Apparently, Skiles decorated his house with blue Christmas lights and hung blue lights around the pool.
So people began saying that Test's wife had died tragically.
No one knows what exactly Mrs. Test passed from.
Supposedly, he was heartbroken and he could not bear to part with her.
Yeah, instead, he had her embalmed and kept her in a glass coffin.
People began saying that you could see a ghost of a woman walking in front of the window and around the property.
People would go out and try to get a glimpse of either the coffin through the window or the ghost of the woman.
So legend says that even though the house was torn down in the 70s, that the spirits of the house remain.
People have reported flickering blue lights,
blue mists, and a woman has been seen on the property who quickly disappear.
We see you. You're a dreamer, a visionary, the master of your own destiny.
What people don't tell you is that dreams aren't always easy.
You probably feel weighed down and frustrated by all the little tasks that steal your energy and time.
Good news, we can help.
Becky and I have started a new business adventure called Quigley Virtual Services. We offer a wide variety of services to streamline your business and give you back your time.
We specialize in proofreading and editing for authors and writers, but we are happy to help you with other business needs.
If you are in need of a reliable virtual consultant, please check out our website, www.quigleyvirtualservices.com. You can also find us on Facebook or Instagram.
So when I started investigating more into this legend, it's a sad story.
I think what I'm mostly disturbed by is the way people treated Mr. Test. They vandalized the property and terrified him later in his life.
Yeah, that's really upsetting to me. Mr. Test wasn't able to stay at night in his own home at the end of his life due to the constant vandalism of his property.
So some of the things that these kids did to him were just mean and outright cruel.
There are some reports of kids swimming in the pool.
I love how we got back at the kids for getting into his pool without permission.
Yeah, apparently he stole their keys and their clothing, which I kind of find hilarious.
Yeah, that is the best.
What isn't awesome is that one of the kids' father ended up suing Mr. Test for taking the items.
See, that's crazy. Let me catch one of mine doing something like that.
For real.
I can't believe that they even went so far as to set fires to some of Mr. Test's buildings on the property.
They also used to let Mr. Test's dogs out of their pens.
Yeah, that is going way too far in my opinion.
Our podcast is growing, and it's so exciting to see all of our new followers on social media and all of the many downloads of our podcast.
Most of our listeners come from iHeartRadio. However, we are on all the major podcast platforms. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to give us a 5-star rating on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us through.
Your comments and likes help others find us. Thank you for tuning in to the Hoosier Myths and Legends podcast. Now back to our show.
So one of the craziest stories of the Vandals terrorizing Mr. Test is when he apparently caught one of these kids in his house in the middle of the night.
Yes, according to the historicindianapolis.com website, he caught kids at his kitchen table drinking a Coke one night.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, for me, that's probably one of my worst fears, worse than actually seeing a ghost. The thought of somebody in my house while I'm asleep.
I agree.
I think it's sad also that toward the end of his life, he started sleeping away from home. If he was home, he slept out in the pool house. It was made out of blocks, so he figured it was more fireproof than the house was.
Yeah, I find that extremely sad.
Mr. Test passed in 1964, and he is buried in Crown Hill Cemetery, according to the Find a Grave website.
I hope he's finally at peace.
Something I really admire is that the property is now a park.
The house and all the buildings are long gone, being torn down in the 70s.
The legend of the home has not gone away, though.
No, it has definitely become a part of Hoosier folklore.
So what do you think, Hope? Do you think the lights can still be seen out there?
Who knows?
Road trip!
Have you ever heard a legend about the House of Blue Lights? Did you or someone you know ever make a trip to see the house? We would love to hear about it. Please send us an email to HoosierMythsAndLegends@gmail.com. We may use it in a later episode. In the email, let us know if you wish to remain anonymous.
To see our source material, please visit our website, HoosierMythsAndLegends.com. Please find us and follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Hoosier Myths and Legends podcast is a Quigley Virtual Services production.
Our theme song was written and recorded by Wet Blanket. The song title is Taxidermy Race Car.
As always, stay spooky.